Firstly, I'd like to thank Amara for pulling this together. When she said she was thinking of organizing this with 20 of the top planetary scientists, I think now we have 90 of the top planetary scientists and some of those like myself who just hang around the edges. So this is fantastic. Well done, Amara. I'd like to also mention that Deep Space Industries is now really getting going here in Luxembourg. Frederick Baker has joined our team. Please chat with Frederick if you want to have a long-term engagement with the company in Europe and its ongoing activities. We're really excited to have him on board. So, what drives asteroid mining companies? We really started this company looking at building an off-Earth economy and considering how to get humanity off Earth. That's one of the things that drives us as our internal passion and is common amongst most of the executive at Deep Space Industries. In order to do that, we really need to have resources to build that economy. Usually I will point around the room and say, look, everything that you can see has been mined from the ground, but this being such a beautiful old building, of course, a lot of the things here are made of wood, and therefore that is falling flat. But if you look at most of things in the world, they were mined from the ground. It's really a small part of the global economy, but it enables almost everything that we do. In space, getting resources, at the moment you have to launch them from the ground at incredible cost, $5 or $10 million per ton. And it's incredibly constraining on the industry. So what we're trying to do is nothing short of providing the starting materials for an in-space economy. In order to do that, we need to get those materials that are in space already, and particularly looking at materials from the asteroids is the most prospective. So what we need is some help. We need some help from planetary scientists to understand what we can mine, where we can mine it, and how we can mine it. So Mamara's already put together an excellent document that people have been looking at, and I'd suggest that you see the questions in there, debate those questions, ask people from Deep Space Industries who are here and the other companies about what those questions mean. But some of the things that are important, we need to understand really some of the things that are necessary to reduce the risks of what we're doing as a company. When we have the first mining operation, we wish to fully understand the geology. We want to fully understand our technology and how it's going to interact with the environment. We want to understand as well markets and regulations and the financial networks that support it. So for planetary scientists, the questions of science and technology and how they interact are the things that we need help with. So we're talking here not just about mineralogy, but also about rock mechanics. And that's one of the things that I would suggest that we understand the least about on the types of asteroids that we're going after, is the rock mechanics. So as we plan our first missions out to do prospecting, not only are we verifying that our mineral models are correct, that the spectral match to the asteroids, to the meteorites that we have is correct, but we have to find out as much as we can about the rock mechanics. Because when I put a shovel into that asteroid and it bounces off, I'm in trouble. Or if it disappears into the dust, I'm equally in trouble. There's an enormous range of rock mechanics parameters from compressive strength, porosity, grain size distribution. All of these things matter, and 100 more nuances of how rock interacts with machinery. So instrumentation to measure that, an understanding of what that means, connecting that to remote sensing, that for us is one of the biggest challenges and one of the places that we really need your help. We also need to understand the context. We need to understand the gravity, the dust environment, the magnetic and electrical properties, everything that's going to, again, affect the equipment that we have and that we're trying to use. So as well as trying to answer these questions for our own purposes, we're likely also to trip over some questions that may be of interest to this audience. We're likely to find out a lot about the formation and evolution processes and aging of the asteroids, the organic chemistry, a whole bunch of things besides. We don't mind at all if this information is discovered, and we'd love to share it with the community. But we can only do it if it's working for the companies and if we're answering the questions that I mentioned earlier. So looking forward to the debates and discussion at this workshop. And again, thank you, Amara. Thank you to Government of Luxembourg also for supporting this and making a great facility available.
Yeah, you might have noticed I accidentally flipped J.L. Galanches and the 3 space mining companies. So let's have the next one. Peter Marquez, is he here? Peter Marquez, super. And then we'll have Joel Surcell after that, and then we'll lead into the scientific presentations with J.L. Galash. Okay, so what we can do is yours.
I don't think we have anything.
Oh, okay, you want to just talk?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, super. Okay, perfect.
Thank you. Good morning. Hey. Well, thank you again for coordinating this and getting it set up, and thanks again to the government of Luxembourg and the Ministry of Economy for organizing all this. I will admit at the very beginning, my background is in policy and government affairs, so I probably will not understand most of what you all are talking about today, but I will be impressed by it. But I do want to thank the government of Luxembourg for all that they've been doing to get this conference organized, but in a larger standpoint of the support that they've given to this industry and letting it grow. We have had just a tremendous experience with the entire government, everywhere from discussions with the senior leadership to, as Mark Saris mentioned, the policy and law that's coming to support these activities. So we couldn't ask for better partners. We couldn't ask for a more fertile environment to do these activities. So I think my colleagues from DSI did a really good job pointing out why we're doing these things. You know, we're trying to go and create an economy off-world and bring resources back to Earth that improve life for all of humanity, as well as expand humanity's footprint into the solar system. So again, my background being in policy and government affairs, I'm reminded, we went, yesterday my colleagues and I went to two World War II memorial sites. One was the cemetery here in Luxembourg, which if you've never been to the American Military Cemetery, it's quite astounding and quite humbling. And then we also went to another one in Belgium, and I was struck by these monuments for the great sacrifices that people had made, and there was an edifice now that was standing there to kind of show support and gratefulness for what people had done. And you know, it gets you thinking, like, what is it that we're working on that people will remember and do? And I think this activity with resource mining in space is something where people look back at this point in time and say, this is the point where humanity made things better for themselves and started to move off-world. And we're at the very beginning of that. I think it's a monumental activity as well. So I'm just humbled by the history in the area. So just a couple of things. I wanted to address some of the particular questions that were on the list that our team looked at as important questions that you all had provided. So the first one is there any evidence that the shape of an asteroid provides information on its composition? We think that's very important. What is the minimum suite of instruments that can be placed on a prospecting mission to study the cohesive and mechanical strengths of asteroid surfaces? What is the minimum suite of instruments that can be placed on a prospecting mission to study the regolith properties? How can water absorption feature at 3.1 microns be best used as an indicator of hydrated minerals on carbonaceous asteroids? I have no idea what I just said, but it's important to us. How could neutron detection support prospecting activities, and what is the maximum depth at which a neutron detector could detect the presence of water? And I think the last one is, among the scientific community, what is the current confidence that spectral class informs bulk composition given space weather and the result from recent missions connecting asteroids with certain spectral classes to known meteor types? So those ones are particularly important to what we're doing. So I look forward to hearing some of those questions addressed during the conference. And again, I'm here, our chief engineer, Chris Voorhees, is here. One of our scientists, Dr. Elizabeth Frank, is here. So we're happy to talk to all of you, any of you, as we go through this. So thank you again for organizing this, and I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Peter. Okay, so now we have Joel Surcell. Joel, there you okay.
Let me second the thanks for the organizers and the government of Luxembourg and Deep Space Industries. It's really an honor to be here. We're very excited about this. Let's see if I can open this. I'm going to take a little different take.
You can also use this.
Fantastic. If it's plugged in, that's wonderful. All right. So I'm going to take, can you hear me in back?
You can take that microphone and walk around.
That's fine.
Okay.
All right, so I'm going to take a little bit different take on it than my colleagues from the other two companies. Before I do, though, let me just say, it's interesting that Jeff Bezos recently made a comment that his vision is about trillions of people living in space. It's a tell. The only way that trillions of people could live in our solar system is if they're living off the asteroids. And if anyone studied it, they understand that. Also, Elon Musk made some similar comments recently that his giant rocket that he's going to announce in a couple of weeks is designed not just to go to Mars, but to go to a number of different bodies. The point is, I agree with the venture capitalists that I was chatting with this morning, that the first trillionaire will be a space industrialist, and it will be based on asteroid resources. That's why we're in the business. Maybe it doesn't work. That's fine. So I wanted to just give you a little insight into how we arrived at our science questions. The way we look at it is that science is a subset of knowledge. Our knowledge about these targets provides constraints on the engineering. So the box that says innovation there is our creative thinking about engineering, about how to extract and use resources from asteroids. Also, constraints are provided by our business model. Now, within innovation, the trick is to come up with the most practical, near-term approach that minimizes the science needs. Okay? So we love science. We agree with everything that everyone said already this morning, but we view many of those questions as nice-to-haves. The trick in the engineering of asteroid mining is to minimize the science requirements. So, also we need to keep in mind that all knowledge is uncertain. So, striving for perfect knowledge is almost never cost-effective. Going back to the innovation question, our business model is a little different in the sense that we're focusing on developing the IP that makes asteroid mining cost-effective in the near term. If you have to have exquisite knowledge of the target before you get there, we think you may have a non-viable business model. We think the trick is to have minimum knowledge about the target and still be able to extract useful resources. So science is about testable models and predictions. Measurements is about quantifying variables about objects. We think there's knowledge needed in both of those categories. Now I'm going to read this chart, always a bad idea. The science need is a validated higher fidelity model of the mineralogy. Notice I did not say petrology. Mineralogy, it's a lesser question, of small, highly accessible NEOs that we can access economically. The whole idea is to assess the economically viable resource reserve. This is the one critical science need that we see. Something like the Gronvik model, so Gronvik, Jedicke, and Botke published their model in Nature recently. Jedicke is one of my collaborators. However, the current Gronvik model, the bins are too large, and it doesn't scale to the very small targets. We think small targets are critical because there are far more of them, and therefore it's far more likely that we'll find small targets in low delta V slots. We think that if your asteroid mining technology depends on knowing the physical structure of the body more than its taxonomic type, then it may not be cost effective. Am I going too long?
You have about 2 minutes.
Perfect. Measurement needs, so that is the scientific need that is the equivalent in mining of assessing the economically viable reserve. And that's needed for business planning. When we have that, we can build economic models of the whole business. Measurement needs, one that are synergistic with this, are we need the orbital elements of a dozen or so 1,000-ton, highly accessible, water-rich, and we know which taxonomic types are the water-rich ones, with moderate spin rates of no more than a few RPM. That's what we need. Now, all that other science stuff is great, but we consider those to be nice to haves, not must haves. So my goal here is to focus the science community on the must haves and also to be aware of the nice to haves. Now, there are other things we need. We need cheaper access to space. Right now, the cost of getting in space on a Falcon 9 is $3 million per ton. We think that's going to come down possibly by an order of magnitude. That's important. We think there are multiple companies that are going to be in that space. And there are some new technologies that we're working on that we think are very helpful. And my talk tomorrow will talk about those. Thank you.